How did the false communication through advertising radium in cosmetics, food, and fashion affect those who used the products or worked closely with them, such as the Radium Girls? In the 1920s through 1970s, a worldwide radium craze occurred, as people became fascinated by the luminescent qualities of this element, and it was manufactured into many products. Seeking to capitalize monetarily on the popularity, large companies producing these products falsely communicated, via advertisement, that it was safe to ingest or use the products. One specific group affected was the Radium Girls, workers in a factory that would put radium paint-dipped brushes in their mouths while painting glow-in-the-dark watches, which caused many deaths in the industry. As the reality of the dangers of radium were exposed, governmental regulations limited its usage and changed working conditions related to dangerous chemicals and components. Radium was an element discovered in the late 1890s by Marie and Pierre Curie. It was not only groundbreaking in science, but Marie Curie was one of the first well-known female scientists, although she didn't gain much credit until after her death. Marie and Pierre continued to study the element's properties. Unfortunately, Marie died in 1934 due to a blood disease caused by her frequent exposure to radium. Because of the seemingly magical healing properties, large corporations quickly abused the use of radium and turned it into a trend before looking into the negative side effects and attributes. Some cosmetic brands that influenced the radium craze include Radior, which was one of the first radium companies that produced cosmetic and beauty products. Chemolite was a popular way to try and get clear, tight skin because they advertised mud and clay treatments that were infused with radium designed to tone, relax, and tighten skin and muscle tissue. But perhaps one of the most influential radium cosmetic lines was from Tho-Radia, a cosmetics brand that would incorporate a mix of thorium chloride and radium into their products and promoted special healing effects. The name of one of the founders was Alfred Curie. Tho-Radia plastered the name Curie all over advertisements and newspapers in hope people would assume it was a brand promoted by Marie and Pierre Curie, which were two very well-known and respected scientists at the time. This quickly became a great advertising scandal, as the false communication led people to believe that Tho-Radia products were safe because they were sponsored by trustworthy scientists. Radium was also infused into food. Some popular radium-infused products were butter, chocolate, and radium water, which was a radium-laced jug that would enhance the water with radium. Radium was also manufactured into many teeth-whitening products. The element has similar structure to calcium, so when the body intakes the radium, it mistakes it for calcium and incorporates it into the bones, causing severe bone cancer and overall sickness. The radium would eat away at the bone, causing pain and very brittle bones. After enough dosage, the spine would collapse. Some exterior and more recognizable characteristics of extreme radium poisoning include cataracts in the eyes and broken or soft teeth. There is even a story of a dentist going to pull out one of the Radium Girls' teeth and accidentally removing her whole jaw. However, it takes a couple of years for these noticeable symptoms to appear, causing the public to continue using radium for its short-term beauty effect, which is blush in the cheeks and an overall glow in the skin.
In 1916, a craze for glowing watches began. Around 70 women began working in factories to paint the glowing watches, dials, and numbers. These watches would glow luminously without the need for sunlight or charging. When painting these watches, they would use their lips to point the brushes for better accuracy, although this resulted in ingesting radium with every brushstroke. In the early 1920s, some of the Radium Girls started experiencing the effects of radium. The majority of the girls began reporting fatigue and toothaches, but it was overlooked for the most part. One of the deaths was that of Amelia Maggia. She was a 22-year-old woman who had been working in the factory since she was 17 and had been reporting nearly a year of pain. On her death certificate, it said that she had died of syphilis, but in fact, she had died from a strange infection that spread to her throat tissues. The disease would slowly pass through her jugular vein, and at 5 p.m., blood had filled her mouth, killing her. Although this had been happening, it still took another 2 years for the United States Radium Corporation to take any action. In 1925, Grace Fryer, one of the workers from the original New Jersey factory, decided to sue. Although she had to spend 2 years looking for a lawyer who was willing to help her. In 1927, she was finally able to file her case along with 4 other workers. The case settled in the women's favor in 1928. By this time, the danger of radium was viewed in full. The lip-pointing technique was discontinued, and the workers were given the appropriate protective gear. Over time, more women sued the radium companies, and they appealed several times. In 1939, the Supreme Court rejected the final appeal. A year prior, the Food and Drug Administration had banned the deceptive packaging of radium-based products. The Food and Drug Administration had been changing for a long time before that, as our knowledge and experiences in the area grew. Since 1979, nearly 100 bills have been passed and introduced to the Congress to regulate food. In 1906, Roosevelt signed the Food and Drug Act, also known as the FDA. The overall rule was the prohibition of interstate transport of unlawful food and drugs. To go more into depth, the law for food was no addition of any ingredient that substituted the food, concealed damaged, posed a health hazard, or constituted rotten or decomposed food. Also, the label must not be false or misleading in any particular way, and the presence and amount of the 11 dangerous ingredients, including alcohol, heroin, and cocaine, had to be listed. This rule was based more on labeling of the products rather than pre-market examination and approval. In 1938, FDR signed the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act on June 25th of 1938, where they added cosmetics and medical devices to the FDA regulations. For food and drugs in 1938, they mandated pre-market approval of all new drugs, and they must have been proved to be safe before they are allowed to be sold. This made it so they would now have legally enforceable food standards, of which authorized inspections and added injunctions were also included. By the 1950s, half of the food supply was subject to a standard, and a series of laws came forth, including laws addressing pesticide residues in 1954, food additives in 1958, and color additive laws in 1960. Over time, the lack of communication showed how much it is truly needed. If there had been proper communication of what radium could do to the human body, lots of deaths, illness, and suffering could have been avoided. Though there were times when proper communication was disregarded, we have learned from our past mistakes and have been able to make our world a better and safer place with a little help from communication and history.